We have a quorum. Good morning. Please invite the officials into the room.
我請官員入嚟先啦，係。有冇官員個 list 喺度？官員個 list 邊度？喺度，我有。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now we are to discuss Chapter 5 of Report Number 6. We hope to conclude our discussion of this chapter this morning, but it depends very much on how the officials answer our questions. Please be direct in answering our questions. Welcome, Mr. So, the Secretary, and Jessie. I'm not going to introduce your team one by one. And as for who will answer the question, please tell me who will answer the question, and that will do. Thank you, David, also. And today, Ms. Helen Leung will be the member leading the questioning. We will allow Mr. Leung to ask his questions. Mr. Leung, you have 20 minutes. I give him more time, and then each member will be given 15 minutes to follow up. Before Mr. Leung speaks, the Policy Secretary is going to make an address. There will be a speaking note. There will be. Thank you very much for the Commissioner, for the Director of Audit for conducting the value for money study, and we thank the PAC for conducting a hearing. Let us explain the operation of Hongkong Post. We generally accept the Director of Audit's comments in respect of the Hongkong Post. The Hongkong Post has already started implementing the recommendations to enhance the operation of the department. The CDB is the policy bureau supervising the Hong Kong Post. We are monitoring its finance, its operation, and from time to time we review its policy performance, finance. The Hong Kong Post is operating by a trading fund, is a government department. It adopts a flexible approach in managing resources and responding to market changes and formulating suitable business strategies while upholding quality of service. Hong Kong Post has been working within the room available within the system. It controls its costs, expand its business so as to increase its revenue. The trading fund in 2014-15 has turned from deficit to surplus, and is able to maintain the postal charges at a very reasonable level. With the efforts of the department and the bureau, there are cost-cutting measures such as merging the International Mail Center sorting section and the General Post Office. It streamlined the procedures by mutual negotiation. It has reduced the increase in terminal dues, simplified work procedures at the counter, and improve allocation resources. As for finding new incomes, there are various measures to help e-commerce. For example, they have the local delivery service, e-express, iMail, and also collection of mail at counter, and also direct mailing and other services. They also provide integrated business solutions to SMEs. The Hong Kong Post is finding new ways to increase revenue and reducing costs by improving the management at the airport authority and provide delivery service for tourists who do their shopping in Hong Kong. We will look into various measures to improve the performance of the Hong Kong Post. In assessing the performance of Hong Kong Post, certain specific features have to be taken into account. It's a demand-led service with the open postal and delivery service in Hong Kong is very competitive. There is variation in mail traffic, and it's difficult to forecast to meet the needs of customers. On one hand, the Post has to meet customers' demand in one hand. On the other, it also has to comply with the government regulations. It does not need to rely on government subsidy, nor can it substantially increase fees and charges. The Hong Kong Post has been actively pursuing the improvement of its financing. Now, the study focused on 4 areas. First, management of mail, management of post office, management of post van, and also the CMC and the General Post Office. And various recommendations have been made, and they are valuable to us. The Bureau and the Hong Kong Post attaches importance to the recommendations. The Hong Kong Post is now implementing the measures gradually. As for mail handling, it's the duty of the sender to pay the full postage. The Hong Kong Post is working hard to prevent the problem of delivery, and they also step up the monitoring of high-risk mail. And from operational perspective and also resources constraint, certain measures, suitable measures will be introduced to recover underpaid postage. As for the mail mix, it is varying from time to time. To allocate manpower suitably, there is no need to do there is the need to do overtime, and it's more cost-effective. It will also help to prevent the excessive increase in the permanent establishment. There is a suitable mechanism to deal with overtime work. As for the management of post offices, we agree with the Director of Audit that we will simplify their network. But to do so, we need to get the understanding of the communities affected. The Hong Kong Post will continue to simplify its network and will control the cost of the post office network and make good use of the post offices for new sources of income. As for the management postal vehicles, the HKIE Post is now starting to review the calculation methods for the usage of postal vehicles. The usage rate is at a reasonable level, generally speaking. With regard to the procurement of vehicle service, there will be the introduction of more market competition to ensure cost effectiveness and meet the needs of the department. As a Central Mail Center and General Post Office building, the Hong Kong Post will make good use of the space available in the CMC to meet the operational needs. As for the reprovisioning of the International Mail Center to the CMC, if there is any adjustment in space, the application will be made to the committee for approval. As for the relocation of the General Post Office, this will be in line with the redevelopment of the harbour front. The Hong Kong Post is working very closely with the departments concerned, and according to plan, in the before the reprovisioning of General Post Office building, the space available in the GPO building will be made good use of. With regard to the recommendations of the report, we'll carefully consider them, and we'll also carefully listen to your views, and we'll work with the PAC in a cooperative way, and we will try our best to answer your question. Thank you, Mr. So.
發問之前咧，大家喺台頭嗰度咧有一份工聯會啊。
That is a letter from the FTU which has been tabled. Mr. So, can you give your speaking notes to us? Please get a copy from Mr. So that you can copy it to all the members. The PMG, do you have anything to say? Do you have any introductory remark? Mr. Yong, do you want to make any introductory remark? Well, no, then Mr. Alan Leung, then Kenneth, are you going to leave at 9:30? Young man and Hakan, can you allow Kenneth to speak before you? So Alan and then Kenneth, and then Hakan and then young man. Alan, you have 20 minutes. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I have done a little study. In fact, the Hongkong Post is often audited by the Audit Commission from 2011 until now. Altogether, including this audit report number 65, there were 5 reports, 36 in 2001, 2002 in 38, 2005 number 44, 2007 number 49, 2010 number 54, and now before us number 65 in 2015. Well, it seems that the Hong Kong Post looks to be a bit thick-skinned and also slow to understand. Is it because of inefficient management, ineffective management that the Hong Kong Post cannot reach the objectives? Now today we have the letter from the FTU, and then later and also Mr. Lee Chok-yuen of the Confederation of Trade Unions also talked to me on this. The operation in the form of a trading fund, having gone through a test of over 10 years, is proven to be not feasible. I think the PAC will explore along the issue along this direction, and I hope the Secretary and also the PMG will give full support to the PAC. This is the 6th audit report in nearly 15 years, and I hope they will assist us with the process so that we can come to a conclusion that is based on facts. Either it is because of poor management or because of the difficult, inappropriate, or rather the impossibility of applying the trading fund concept to the to the Hong Kong Post. Now you, on one hand, have to meet the requirement of the citizens, and the postage level should be reasonable and affordable. And on the other hand, you also have to reach the target rate of return. So I have found the speech of the Secretary for Economics on the, in 1995, the Secretary on Economic Development. That is the speech of conversion to trading fund.
邊份文件？
You will have to tell the government which document you are referring to. Please, you do. CCS, sorry. R65/5 Info 1. Please refer to it. That's what Mr. Leung is referring you to. Well, now in the picture painted by report number 65. Is very different from the speech given by the Secretary for the economy in the establishment of the trading fund, because the Secretary at that time said that it was to introduce flexibility. It was the Secretary for Economic Services who said that. It's on page 4422. He says that, Mr. President, let me repeat that the main purpose of changing the operation of the Hong Kong Post to trading fund is to give it flexibility, to make good use of resources, and to provide efficient and modern mail services to enable sustainable development in Hong Kong. So the rationale at that time is to give it flexibility, so that it will run as if it were a business. And the Secretary said that for profitable services, it could be expanded, so that the revenue can be plowed back to services that were run at a loss. But the picture painted by this report is that well, over the 15 years, 12 years, it was run at a loss, and it failed to achieve the targeted rate of return. And when it comes to overtime, it's not counted as the number of hours, but on the specific delivery volume for every beat. And it was said that for once every 3 or 5 years there will be a review. However, the delivery volume of the beat has not been reviewed as they're supposed to. The Audit Commission has sent out 50 letters. 13 of them have borne no stamps. However, 43 of them actually went through. There were 12 without any stamps, yet they were delivered. And I can see that when it comes to procurement, especially when it comes to airmail, there is no deposit collected. With the reprovisioning of the General Post Office, well, the report dated on the 31st of October 1998 already said that whether it was worth it. So it's been 17 years and it's still there. In 1995, that was what the Secretary for Economic Services said, that there should be flexibility to enable efficient deployment of resources to meet demand. And if you refer to report number 65, it's been 20 years. I think what caught my eye most was that it simply wasn't done. And I have a question for the Secretary, Mr. So. In his opening speech, he made it out as if, well, he just didn't have the tools to do the job. Well, they have to achieve the targeted rate of return, and you said that it was demand-led, and they had to meet expectations. So when it comes to policy, I have highlighted 5 foci of this report number 65. Do you think that it is a failure to run the Hong Kong Post by trading fund? If you agree, can you point out to the PA, to the committee, the reasons for the failure and how you will address these issues with appropriate policies? Well, just now Mr. Leung has pointed out 2 points. One is about policy, the other one about management. Let me remind you, if you're not talking about policy and it's management, or if it is management and policy as well, would you please say so? Thank you. I still think that operating it by way of a trading fund is appropriate. The issues you have identified in audit reports, whether it's this one or previous ones, they have all been followed up. That is the management issues. The recommendation of the audit commissioner are agreed by us. Whether it is operation of the trading fund issues or others, we agree that these issues will have to be resolved. But there is no direct relationship with the mode of operation, that is by trading fund. In a speech of the Secretary of Economic Services in 1995 is actually the same, because the Hong Kong Post needs to have flexibility to operate, because there is fierce competition in the market. They need the flexibility to follow closely market changes. So it's still appropriate to use the trading fund. If it weren't used, the service level and fees level would not be kept at the current level. So I think that it is still appropriate to run it by the trading fund. I will defer to the Postmaster General. Perhaps we'll let Mr. Leung follow up on your answers before we defer to the Postmaster General. Well, when I make accusations, of course, I have to give you the basis. Other members, I believe, will ask questions on the 5 points, so there is no need for you to give me an answer in one go, because it may confuse the record. But I'd like to follow up by asking the Postmaster General. I do believe that after you've taken office, you're a diligent person. You must have read the previous audit reports, especially in report 54, that is about 5 years ago. This was mentioned. Manpower, efficiency of post offices, and there was a standard answer given that you accept the recommendations of the Audit Commission. But it's been 5 to 6 years, and it seems that when it comes to efficiency of operation, there hasn't been any improvement. Not much. You, Master General, you have hands-on involvement of the operation. So can you give me a succinct explanation? Well, from report 54 to now 65, when it comes to manpower and efficiency, the fact that there hasn't been much improvement and recurrence of the problems. Please explain. In the past few years, our team has been doing a lot to cope with market changes and changes in the trade. And we're talking about substantial changes. In the past few years, we've tried to reduce cost and to enhance user experience. The whole team has put in a lot. In 2011-12, when we started with a loss, and last year we had a profit of $160 million, and we have met all the service pledges. We have 98% of customer satisfaction, and it's because of the hard work put in by our team. I agree that when it comes to operation of the department, there are areas that we need further improvement. We'll take reference of the recommendation of the report to enhance our performance. In relation to previous audit reports, say for example, to streamline the Hongkong Post network, we've done a lot of work. When it comes to planning, well, that we have to follow a guideline. So we started off with reviewing the guideline. In Lok Wah Post Office is now replaced with a mobile post office. And on Wednesday, on Wednesdays, it closes, and for 59 post offices, the operating hours have been adjusted. And we have spoken to Tuen Mun District Council and also Eastern District Council in relation to Cloudview post office and also another one in Tuen Mun. We've decided that starting from the 1st of January next year, these two post offices will be closed. We have encountered lots of difficulties, and that is understandable because the area affected will have strong views. We'll take them into account and we will explore other alternatives to deal with it. No disrespect to the Postmaster General, but there will be ample opportunities for her to elaborate about actual operation of, say, Cloudview Post Office. I have 3 minutes, and I'd like to asking from a different perspective. Well, you have taken office for quite some time. Do you feel that your hands are tied? Do you think that the trading fund and having to meet the targeted rate of return set by the financial secretary, and on top of that, meet the increasing expectation or demand of the public, do you think that you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, that your hands are tied? Postmaster General. Well, we do understand the operation of the trading fund, and you do our best with the flexibility given to us. Compared to other departments with funding allocation, we have flexibility. Looking back in 1995, when the government proposed to establish the trading fund, with a service volume increasing, if we were to improve service quality, dealing expenditure and revenue separately may not timely meet demand. And indeed, the trading fund has given us flexibility. We are a government department, and of course we have to abide by rules and regulations. Well, for the first 20 minutes, I will just maybe now make concluding. I will pause here for concluding remark. Given what the Secretary and the Postmaster General said, that the trading fund operation itself is all right. The Postmaster General doesn't think that her hands are tied. So on this basis, I will proceed with the hearing. Well, with the flexibility of the trading fund, and the situation is like this, that means that there is mismanagement of the Hong Kong Post, either because of the people or there are problems with the system. That's the picture painted by this report. Oh, so what do you think about what I've said? These concluding remarks. Postmaster General, I have reminded you that you have to be very careful with when answering Mr. Leung's question, because, well, now Mr. Leung asked you that if you think that the trading fund is appropriate, then where does the problem lie? Well, take a macro view. We will ask about details later. Secretary, we think that using the trading fund to run the Hong Kong Post is appropriate. As was said in 1995, it would give more flexibility, and this still rings true today. When it comes to the service of the Hong Kong Post, they're taking a macro view. As the Postmaster General said, that the satisfaction rate reaches 98%. But there are problems with the operation. Recommendations are made in the report. We have accepted the majority of them, and we have followed them up as well. Postmaster General, you have not answered Mr. Leung's question as to whether you have read previous audit reports. Please do so before you proceed. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. All of them? We have been following them up. When it comes to the trading fund, I would like to say something in relation to the operation. Well, if you want to answer, please answer. We have to compile a report and give it to the government, and we hope that it will be a report that serves its purpose. I will want to be fair to the Hong Kong Post. We do not criticize for the sake of criticizing. Well, if you have something that you think you don't want to say, do say it. It doesn't matter. You will still get your promotion if it's due.
The purpose of the inquiry is to find the facts. Yes, Chairman, I just want to add that operating under the trading fund is part of our identity as a government department, and we have a lot of rules and regulations that we need to comply with. So we said that, is it a fully commercial operation? Of course not. It's not a direct, you cannot make that direct comparison, because the majority of our colleagues are civil servants. Some 5,000 out of 7,000 are civil servants. And regarding the civil service personnel management, I need to comply with CSB regulations. For example, salary remuneration review that needs to comply with the whole civil service adjustment, and even recruitment, I need to comply with the relevant regulations. And in financial management, the government has some requirements that we need to comply with. So when we operate under the trading fund, I would like you to understand that we need to comply with the trading fund framework. Well, just now Mr. Alan Leung had a summary that the trading fund might be applicable or suitable, because we heard the Secretary and the Postmaster General saying that it was suitable for the post office operations. So, Chairman, I'd like to direct you to Mr. Deng Gap-yu's letter from the Federation of Trade Unions. There is a Schedule 1 attached. So I'd like the government to confirm. Mr. Deng Gap-yu has listed the asset, return on asset for the different departments operating on the trading fund. For example, land registry, the EMSD. Well, can you confirm the veracity? Well, it's not fair for you to ask him to confirm somebody else's work. Well, not confirm then. Well, other departments, company registry, telecom authority, they operate under the trading fund. So if you look at the Audit Commission, the Commissioner's report in Chapter 1, they have some tables there. So I'd like to ask the government the key KPIs under the trading fund. It seems that there are three important criteria. There's profitability, return on asset, and the Postmaster General mentioned the public satisfaction. So are these three KPIs an indication of whether the department is operating effectively? Are you applying these three criteria? Well, just now Mr. Alan Leung mentioned that in setting up the trading fund, well, I want to refer to something concrete. The return on asset, the profitability, and public satisfaction. Are these the three major KPIs? Yes, we apply different criteria to assess our performance. We have a performance pledge. That is public information. In 2014-15, we had comprehensive compliance. And some items in some areas, we had even exceeded our performance targets. Another area, Postmaster General, could you tell us where you had achieved your performance criteria? You have to be more specific. We have 25 performance pledges, and in our different types of services, including local and overseas mail, counter service, express mail, local express mail, and so on. I'll give you some examples. Chairman, all performance pledges, I understand, well, excuse me, some performance pledges are just just described so that they can achieve them. So financially or performance-wise, profitability, return on assets, and just now we referred to satisfaction. Are these three your major performance targets? Are these the most important? Yes, these are the major ones, but allow me to refer to the performance pledge in our department. These thresholds are very high. Well, the performance pledge is something else. Mr. Leung asked you something about responsibility, and in Mr. Alan Leung's speech, it was mentioned, and Ken is now following up on the 3 criteria. You confirm that, so you can set aside your public satisfaction aside, because we're talking about price and service, the affordability. That is not what he's asking now. In profitability or return on assets, the government requirement is that within a certain period we need to comply. It's not on an annual basis. They don't have an annual requirement. It's within a certain period of time they should accomplish that target. And on operating performance, regarding profitability, the main indicator is the targeted performance level. Well, the target return, well, I want a longer term view. I get that. In Mr. Tangkapiu's Schedule 1, I see that under the trading fund, we have different departments using a trading fund. Some departments, their return, we have 63% for a commercial enterprise. That is phenomenal for that kind of return on asset. So even if you refer to the audit report, we have a lot of fixed assets. We have Chalap Kok, Kowloon Bay, we have the Central Post Office, and we have 104 post offices. So do you feel that using this to assess your performance, isn't that fair? Because compared to other departments, when they don't have fixed assets, do you think that this is unfair? Do you have any view on this? Postmaster General? Well, first of all, as a trading fund, the government has a trading fund ordinance. So how do we assess the trading fund performance? Let me quote from the ordinance because it's more accurate. That is, within a reasonable time frame, there is the ability such that the income of the trading fund meet the expenses in providing the government service, and it also needs to provide capital to service the debt incurred. Well, I'm not familiar with other trading funds, so I cannot comment on them. Regarding the post office, the government has set these target return levels, and we are just complying with this arrangement. So that is the Economic Service and Treasury Bureau's ambit. Well, Mr. Leung said that in the Schedule 1 you have 5 trading funds. Yours is low, and Ken and Alan are asking the same question. They are trying to understand, is the trading fund appropriate? The Secretary said it's appropriate, the Postmaster General said it's appropriate, but when you look at the schedule, you're failing. We want to help you understand, help us understand. Why are you failing? Where are you failing? We're not even talking about governance yet. We're just looking at the trading fund, and you're saying you're complying with the trading fund, so we want to understand the facts. I've been asking some 10 minutes to find the facts. So let me make this comparison. In the post office, our operation are facing open market competition. you are aware that there are a lot of competitors in the market, and this market has very low entry thresholds and low barriers of entry. So service providers they can choose the geographic location of service, the type of service, and so on. Now, relatively speaking, Hongkong Post needs to provide a service to the public, so that is a big difference. So when we say service to the general public, that means throughout Hong Kong we need to provide postal service. It's convenient, whether you are talking about mail delivery or counter service. So that means we need to maintain very large coverage of post office and delivery service. So in the face of competition, you need to understand my costs will be under pressure. So if you're asking me to compare to other trading funds, I think this is one stark difference, because the other trading funds, yes, I've heard the response. Put simply, Postmaster General had responded. So the market the post office is facing is an open market with fierce competition, but your operations you are a government institution facing a cutthroat market. So I've already highlighted this. So you should understand that it's an impossible mission. Mr. Alan Leung came up with an interim conclusion. So this is my interim perspective. Let's now refer to the audit report. Page 5, diagram, figure 2. In figure 2, we see the Hongkong Post in the last decade, the mail traffic that they've been handling. Now, I've heard the Postmaster General say that this is an open market, they can't control it. But we understand mail delivery is increasing in the face of internet or e-commerce, but in the last decade, the mail traffic handled by Hong Kong Post, apart from the spikes in 07-08, overall speaking, there has been a steady fall. I won't call it a sharp fall, it's a steady fall. So how do you interpret this trend? Well, you're saying you're working very hard to develop your market. Well, management, you need to control costs. But in developing income streams, you seem to fall short. That is my interim observation. Well, regarding figure 2, allow me to explain. Mail traffic, why, overall speaking, it's on a downward trend? Because the total mail volume, we're talking about 1 billion pieces. A lot of them are letters. And letters, well, as electronic communications is becoming more popular, prevalent, then in personal mail, the majority is now replaced by electronic mail. In the past, we would mail Christmas cards. Now people hardly send paper Christmas cards. In commercial mail, we also see a trend such as bills are now issued electronically. And if you look at the diagram, local mail in green, basically from 07-08 we've been seeing a fall. Why? Because in 08 there was the financial tsunami, the finance sector. They were cost-cutting very drastically, and they had promoted electronic billing. Well, 07 was the peak. The drop started from 08-09. And why do we see an increase in local mail? That was due to elections, so that drove a spike. Now, regarding building businesses or developing income streams, well, we've been spending a lot of effort. Just now, the Secretary, well, you could provide more data for us. I've heard electronic billing, email, leading to less mail. Well, you can provide more data. In the last decade, the personal and commercial packages, has that increased? Do you have these statistics? Thank you, Chairman. You, Postmaster General, you can respond later. You don't need to respond now. Chanakan. Well, the Secretary and I belong to the same political party. I need to disclose that. Chairman, my question is about the trading fund. First of all, Alan Leung said that the Economic Services Secretary in 1905 in the Legislative Council said that the purpose of setting up the trading fund was to allow the post office to use excess revenue to improve efficiency, to drive efficiency, and when necessary, they could make improvements. The post office could also implement technology and changes in consumer behavior. Well, I'd like to direct the witness to Figure 1 on page 8. That refers to the profit and loss over the last 5 years. A lot of our colleagues had mentioned that the post office in the past, there were 8 years of losses. So I'd like to ask the government, in this table, well, the figures are quite peculiar. In the year 2010 to 2014, the profit and loss volatility is very drastic. In 2010, they earned more than 100 million, and then they lost 100 million, and then they made another profit of 100 million. So you're saying that you're facing cutthroat competition, and then personal mail has not changed. Then why do you have wide fluctuating profits and losses? How do you explain that? Postmaster General. Thank you, Chairman. Well, referring back to the profit and loss, you would need to look back further. As a matter of fact, the operations didn't start off on a good start. There wasn't this drastic change between 2010 and 12. There is a very important reason that our postage had been adjusted in 2002, and there was almost a decade plus where there was no adjustment in postage, and we had went through SARS and then the economic downturn. That is why it had not been adjusted. That's why postage was not adjusted. So you need to understand that it's very labor intensive. My costs, almost 50% are in salaries.
Another two major cost factors are the terminal dues. Say if I send mail overseas, I have to pay service to the overseas post office, and there is also the air freight. I have to pay the airlines. These costs are increasing. These cost areas are increasing. Over the long time, since we were not able to adjust our postage, the profit, of course, would be affected. Therefore, in 2013, we propose to change the major postage. If you look at Table 1, with the inability to adjust postage, our profits is declining. We even went into the red. Therefore, we have to make proposals to increase postage, and therefore in 2012-13 we were in dire strait. In October 2013, we were able to adjust postage together with other measures to increase revenue and cut costs. After a multi-pronged approach has been was adopted, then the loss was substantially cut. We keep on with our efforts, and therefore in 2014-15 we were able to have profits. Within a short period of time, we were able to turn red into black. That has shown that the whole team is working very hard to cope with the situation. You have to bear in mind that competition in the market is getting more and more difficult. Now, Director, if you look at the number, you also have other income. That is the income from the exchange fund. Is not your merit. If you look at operating cost, turnover, there is no growth. You need to look at the whole set. I don't want you to make mistakes. Mr. Leung referred to the stable level of mail traffic, about 10 million cases. And for income or revenue is rather stable, and for expenses, they are also stable. Your profit mainly comes from other income. Mr. Chairman, in explaining the turning of loss into profit, I emphasize on the income side. Say from 2011 to 2010-11, operating profit 1,136 million. And then the loss of more than 114 million, the deficit. That was the result of no increase in postage. But after postage adjustment in 2013, together with other revenue and cost measures, we were able to obtain a profit. As for other income, it comes from the reserves. We invest our reserves, but we cannot rely on the investment income to cover our operating loss, because that is not sustainable. If we just rely on investment income to cover our operating loss. Then at the end of the day, the reserves will be depleted. Chairman, I just want to follow up a issue under Table 1. Now, she said that in 2012-13, she attempted as far as possible, to cut cost. But if you look at cost, it was about $5.2 billion. And then in 2014-15, it's just also roughly $5.2 billion. So there is not much cost saving. How can she explain that? With regard to revenue and cost measures, they didn't start in 2012-13. We have been doing that over many years. When I joined the GPO, or when I joined the Hongkong Post, I enhanced the efforts put into that. With regard to operating cost, you might say there was an increase. But when you look at cost measures, you don't just look at the total cost. You also need to consider what volume of mail, what traffic, what kind of mail traffic, what volume of mail traffic you're handling. Now, for labor-intensive procedures, they can be handled by making use of technology and thereby cutting unit cost. Say, for example, in terms of sorting, say in the CMC, we upgraded the mechanization. Many letters can be dealt with by mechanical means, thereby reducing the need for manpower to do sorting to do the handling by manual means, and we are able to compress the cost for handling letters. We also have other cost measures, for example, the rationalization of the post office network. If you look at if you compare the same volume of mail traffic, we are able to control cost. In what way can you control that? Is it in terms of limiting manpower? Now, you started with 7,700. Are there at present 7,000? Yes, 7,000 odd colleagues. There are 7,000 odd colleagues. As a mail traffic, it has been stabilized, and you haven't cut your manpower. I'm not asking you to cut the manpower, but how can you explain your efficiency if there is no increase in mail traffic, while at the same time there is the same manpower? We use optical recognition technology to help letter sorting. We are now developing the optical recognition of Chinese addresses. With full implementation, we'll be able to save about $1.8 million per year. In recent years, we also have the integrated mail system to simplify the counter procedures. The counter procedures and backup procedures have been integrated in the past. A lot of counter work is done by manually copying. With computerization, we are able to save safety posts or so. But I don't mean to dismiss them. They will be redeployed to do other work. As for bulk service, in the past, there was no weight limit. There is no cap on weight. But in recent years, we asked we set it at 7 kilograms at least. Now we can use less mail bags, and this will save manpower. And also the air cargo space will also be better utilized. As for adjusting the operating hours of the post offices, we save about $4 million. I thank the PMG for her hard work in terms of cost saving. But in terms of revenue measures, she seems not to have done enough. If you look at figure 3, 97% of the revenue came from general mail services in countries of similar facing similar situation. The post offices have a lot of revenue measures. Say, for example, in retail and e-commerce, they do more. Logistics, digital service, financial services. They also have measures to keep up with the times so as to increase their revenue. But I want to ask the administration, while facing the competition from courier services in the private sector, what other measures have they introduced to increase revenue in other areas? If you don't have any answer off the bat, then you can give us a reply in writing. Now, with regard to e-commerce or e-purchase, we introduce a number of services. Say, with regard to cross-border e-purchase, we take the opportunity to provide e-express. That is tracking service, and the charge is quite low. And we serve 12 target destinations, and it is very welcome among the e-commerce operators. And there is also iMail, which is a bulk register mail service. Now, the e-commerce operators are attracted to use this service. In the mainland, cross-border e-purchase is very common. We also work with the mail services of the mainland to help arrange the mails that come from overseas to go to China through Hong Kong. As for we also waive the handwritten forms. People can fill in the information via the computer to manage their accounts with us. We also have APIs. Can you give us a supplementary paper? And also, how much profits you have made from these new services? Mr. Chairman, can I ask two more simple questions? Within the structure of the Hong Kong Post, there is the business development branch. I think it is to develop new businesses. Now you have souvenir stamps. I believe it's very profitable, but in recent years, for the philately service, the launching of the philately service is not very frequent, and you have, but in fact they are similar to the so-called souvenir banknotes. And in fact, the banks are making a lot of profits, and there are long queues for those notes. So, in terms of philetic service, have you reduced your service in this area, and how many staff members are working in that division? Now, the business development branch is not just working on stamps and philetic service. With regard to philetic service, there are 10 sets of stamps launched every year by the Hongkong Post, and quite a lot of them are very popular. Say in summer, we have a set of stamps for Chinese and foreign legends. We spend a lot of effort on product design and also stamp design. There is a storybook accompanying the stamps, and the stamps were launched during the book fair, and that was very popular. As for philetic service, the income was affected mainly because there is the aging of the philetic community. Young people may have developed other interests. We put in a lot of effort to develop this market. We promote philetic activities among the schools. As for the manpower in the business development branch, I can provide the information after the meeting. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the last question. Concerning the trading fund, the GM has to meet targets, making use of fixed assets to achieve a reasonable rate of return set by the FS. But over the years, in 12 years, the rate of return has not been achieved. Who should have the responsibility? Is it the secretary, or is it the PMG? And in Mr. Tan Ka-piu's letter, Mr. Tang said that last year the trade union asked the CE to conduct a review on the trading fund, but there was no follow-up. Why is it so? Mrs. So or Mrs. Ting? Now, with regard to the rate of return, Mr. Chairman, the PMG has already explained that we are facing tough competition in the market. In 2013, with the increase in postage, it has now a profit. If you look at figure 4, starting from 2015, 16, said the speaker, there was decline, but now after the postage increase, we are seeing the increase of revenue. We have to look at the actual situation in the market. The PMG, as I have said earlier, there are specific reasons for the deficits. Mr. Chen asked why there was no review of the trading funds, why there is no information, no follow-up. Well, in our department, we just follow government policy. The policy is to maintain the post by Hongkong Post by trading fund, but there is a demand to reach the targets. But you say you follow government policy. Does it mean that you can ignore government policy, or you have dealt with it? You ask the secretary, and then the secretary, I don't know where he's going. So there is a policy there, and you have to achieve that. Now, Chairman, in fact, in UK, they review the trading fund once every 3 years.
Labor Union asked for a review, and I heard that last year the FS himself thought that the performance of the fund was poor. That's why he suggested a review. Well, if there weren't any reviews, is it the case that you're going to leave it like that, running at a loss year after year? Mr. Yung? I think the review Mr. Chan referred to was the one mentioned by the FS at the beginning of the year. That is, in relation to the development of e-commerce, what new businesses can Hong Kong Post develop to seize the opportunities given by a blooming e-commerce development? Well, we have been following up on this. We hope that there will, as soon as we have a conclusion about new measures, we will get back to you. Yes, but what Mr. Chen asked was that the staff union wrote to the Hong Kong Post asking for a review. If you can't give the answer, maybe you will give it shortly afterwards. If there is an answer now, please tell what has been done, where the letter has gone to, because there is a letter and a question has been asked, so you have to give an answer. We will look for the information. Mr. Raymond Wong. Well, over more than 10 years, the Audit Commission has been following the Hong Kong Post quite closely. As Mr. Leung said, well, 6 reports. However, the Hong Kong Post has been recalcitrant and calcified. Well, there has been a report, and the Public Accounts Committee had meetings, and then the government will come out to say that they take on board the recommendations. So they went through the motions. And of course, what they will surely say is that they accept the recommendations of the audit report, and they will continue to strive to improve. However, there are problems with the delivery vehicles, with the system, with everything. In the past 6 reports, there has been a number of problems identified, and there has not been any improvement. You said that you're trying to reduce cost and to develop more service areas, but still, the situation is bad. Now that the situation has gone from bad to worse, and you have spent more than before. Well, when it comes to overtime, if a lot of people have to do a lot of overtime, then you can employ more people. In the past hour or so, you've been beating about the bush. You have not proffered any explanations. You have not answered any questions. The points identified in the report have been abundantly clear. We check it by value of money. We hold hearings to monitor the government. And we ask you to explain, to expound, and maybe to express your objection towards the report. No, you did not do that. You spent over an hour wasting our time beating about the bush, circumventing the issue. I have a lot of questions to ask you. Mr. Leung asked you outright whether there is a need to review the trading fund. It's a matter of is a question of principle. The Hong Kong Post is a mess, whether it is provision of service or management. So is the problem with the fund. Some members said that is the problem with the fund. Mr. Gary Chan mentioned about the labor union letter. And there was a comparison with other trading funds as well. But your answer was unsatisfactory. From the PS and the Master General and also the Secretary, they all said that there are some hiccups with the operation of the fund, and we will address these issues. But someone else again point out that there are problems with the fund. You will have to answer us. You did not tell us whether there will be a review, unless you tell us that it will continue to run as the trading fund because there is no problem. I need a clear answer from you. Mr. Wang, it's not for them to say whether to change or not, but it's a policy, and he's the secretary. They can do a review, but they have to go through government-established procedures. I understand, but he is the one who will make a difference. You're responsible for the Hongkong Post, so you have to review the policy. It's run at a loss year after year, providing poor services. Well, you talk about competition. If you can't compete with others, fold the service and cut manpower. The problem now we face is that there is the trading fund. What's the purpose of the trading fund? It was made clear. 1995, when the fund was established, it was for a specific purpose. And it's now 20 years later. Well, does it still suit the operation of the Hong Kong Post? There are other services run at with a trading fund. Say, for example, the telecommunications. But it worked, but not you. Why didn't you have a review? Because this is a crucial problem. It will lead to other management problems. You have to, first of all, tackle the problems related to the system. As we've said on policy, we do think that the Hong Kong Post being run by a trading fund is suitable. If it's not run by trading fund, you can switch it back to a department receiving allocation or privatize it. We have considered these alternatives. We think that running it by trading fund is most suitable. Perhaps you can give us information, papers about the considerations you have taken, because we will follow up on your answer. If you have not actually seriously considered it and support it with documentation, it's difficult for us to write it in the report. If you've had a meeting, give us papers that to show us that you have considered privatization or switching back to the way before. You're asked if there's any review. You said there is a need to review. It looks like you have had an internal review. You will have to support it with papers. Perhaps I'll give you another chance to answer again. Well, on a macro level, we have considered what other alternatives there were. Well, it could switch back to a department receiving funding allocation. That means you have considered it, but there was no proper discussion. That's why there is no paper. And there are only three ways to go: privatization, trading fund, or switching back to a normal government department. Now you're asked if you would review. Would you or would you not? Is that right, Mr. Wong? I think the question has been answered. They just ignore us. Well, you said that they could switch back to government department. Well, you said that there are problems with the operation or management because they have to operate on by the fund. They have to be self-financed, which is different from other government departments. So it is better run in this way. Is that right? Well, if you refer to the document from the labor union, you will get a lot from it. Well, they compare 5 different trading funds. The EMSD. They don't have to provide service outside. If they do, they will make money. You have to listen carefully to the questions because it will help you. They talk about an affordable service. And it can be done because you can turn a loss to a profit. Well, you have to answer us, otherwise we won't be able to prepare the report. We can't explain for you. Do you understand? Mr. Wong, let's talk about the trading fund. Well, usually in the audit report, they won't mention anything about the abolition or otherwise of the trading fund. You said that starting from this year, well, the Hongkong Post, which is responsible for managing the fund, the operation is self-financed. So the profit generated will be used to cover the cost. The general manager is the Postmaster General, and the GMP is responsible for making sure that the fund is run in an effective way to provide quality service, and that it will generate a profit to sustain the operation and to and make use of the proper asset to generate a targeted rate of return. But you failed. In the report, they have not identified exactly where you have failed. But when it comes to management of the Hongkong Post and also handling of mail, it shows that there are problems with the trading fund, and over the years they have not been resolved. That's why people are concerned that whether there is a need for a review of running it with the fund, with the trading fund. I'll continue with my questions. Part 2, in relation to management of mail processing. A number of people are concerned about this. I'll have to compress my time because when it comes to management of mail processing, I wanted to talk about a checking of mail, and that senior officers will have to check 70 or so. I'm not going to go into detail. What about working overtime? I think that's most outrageous. Well, there is a large amount of overtime worked, and you have to pay for that, and that is a problem of a long-term manpower shortage. There are about 4,000 to 5,000 people dealing with a large volume of mail. Well, every year you will have to pay with about $170 million overtime pay. Well, say for example, someone with a starting pay of $20,000. That overtime payment, well, will enable you to employ a lot of people. There is a serious problem with people working overtime, and you talk about reducing cost and maximizing profit. So we're talking about $179 million overtime in lieu. Tell me, how many people can you employ with that money? Well, there are only 2,000 actually. 5,000. 2,000? No, 5,000 civil servants, and the rest are contract staff. No, that's only my preamble. Just to illustrate that there is a serious problem with people working overtime. In a new recruitment exercise, say for example, the waiting list of the last round will be abandoned. You will have to wait for some time for every recruitment exercise. How many recruitment exercises have you done in the past few years, and how many vacancies are there, and how many of them have been filled? I would defer to the Assistant Master General, Mr. Au. Well, with a new round of recruitment exercise, the waiting list of the last round will be abandoned. You will have to wait for 6 months to finish the recruitment exercise. And how come the conditions of employment are so different? How many exercises have you done? How many people did you set out to recruit? And in the end, how many have been recruited? Ms. Au? Assistant Postmaster General. The reason for working overtime, well, our establishment was based on general mail volume, but there are seasonal changes, or even over the week, there are differences from Monday to Friday. Well, please explain. There are 7,000 people, 5,000 are civil servants. And the letter from the labor union, Appendix 1, and it has set out the number of people. And in 2009, 7,700, and 2009, 10, 7,005, and in 2010 to 11, 7,400. So the number has been dropping. You have to explain to Mr. Wong and to us. Well, the reason for the increasing overtime is because of reducing manpower. It's meaningless for you to tell us to talk about Christmas email, Christmas mail, and elections. We're asking you about recruitment, so we will get a better understanding of the problems you're facing. Explain in this way. Well, it mentioned about 2009. An establishment stood at about 7,400. And it's now October. Well, last month was October. We have about 7,100 people. There is a reduction, mainly because with the promotion of mechanization, we have actually done a lot. I want to interrupt. Well, a lot of people may want to ask about this point. My question was specific. Well, because of the appalling number of overtime hours. Well, you talk about streamlining manpower, and at the same time there is manpower shortage. I don't want to hear about manpower shortage. Well, there are problems with recruitment. I do think there is a manpower shortage. Answer me. Well, unless you tell me that there is a surplus of manpower or is sufficient. We are not familiar with this. Perhaps Mr. Wong, you need to give them, let them give more information so members of the public will better understand it. I may declare that there is serious overtime hours worked, and I think is because of the long-term manpower shortage. And unless you say that no, we have to cut manpower because of mechanization, so there will is only 7,100. Then you answer me, well, how come there is such a large amount of overtime hours worked? Ms. Au?
Every year we will review the staff levels. Just now I mentioned when we recruit staff, it takes 7 to 9 months, and in the last 2 years we have tried to compress. For example, where we have a shortfall is in the airmail center. From June last year, we had 11 recruitment exercises, including where we had sent some leaflets to residents in Dongchong. We would like to see more applicants. The situation has improved slightly in our airmail center. Last year, the wastage was some 30% of contract staff, but in this financial year, in the first 6 months, it has been less than 10%. So we have been doing this work in our recruitment for overnight shift. You have still not answered Mr. Wong Yok-man. He will explode in a fury again. Please respond. It's very simple, Postmaster General. You just have to tell me that I have sufficient staff levels, then you don't need to answer the rest. And then explain why you have to spend 170 million and 79 million in overtime. And you tell me that it's got nothing to do with staff level. You even have to reduce staff. Where's the logic? Do you understand his question? Could you, the establishment right now, we can handle our daily work, and we have contract staff to supplement that, and when there's volatility, we have overtime work. So during some times we have a shortfall. Right now, as of today, the contract staff, we have a shortfall of 150. We are recruiting, and according to the Audit Commission report, we are also reviewing where we need to recruit extra staff such that we can do better in the toil arrangement, the time off in lieu arrangement. Mr. Wong is asking about the 179 million overtime. Why is there an expenditure of 179 million? This money could be spent on recruiting a lot of people. It's a very simple question. You can explain this to the public. Why do we have such a large figure? Do we have a shortfall of staff? What's going on? You're saying there are enough staff, and why do we have this situation? Well, in our operations, for example, in our counter at the post office, we have overtime because some members of the public, they arrive at close to closing hours. We also need to do some settlement during the day, so there is overtime involved in our email center. There are no breaks throughout the year, so we need to have 2 shifts. We have done the calculation. If we increase another shift and add staff, it's not so flexible and cost efficiency. So the different divisions are reviewing the staff levels, and every year we have a human resources plan review. So we hope that in overtime we would like to tackle it at source, and because overtime we feel such a large figure is not ideal. I need to join a housing panel at 11, so allow me to follow up. She did not answer my question. It doesn't matter. I hope other legislators can follow up. These overtime is much more than toil figures. So you see, we have large volumes of mail. We have 4,000 civil servants who had received overtime payment. So aside from the mail distribution division, 48%, why is this situation occurring? You're referring to the airmail center, that is international mail. That is a disaster area. There are 14 people who have overtime more than 1,000 hours for 15 years. And in order to reach the performance pledge, so you're seeing that overtime is part of a daily routine. That's why we won't have standard working hours. If we were to have standard working hours, now that has been vetoed. So if we had standard working hours, how would you manage? Explain that overtime is recurrent. It's routine. So the people who work there must be crazy. Of course, they get overtime payment. Well, could you... the airmail center, why do we have such ridiculous overtime? Is it because there is a system in place? Or is it that they have completed one task and they don't need to continue their task, and if they continue to do more they get overtime payment? Well, you need to explain to us. So if we just look at the 179 million, that is a very large figure. Could you explain the intention? Well, I referred to they referred to the airmail center. We understand that is a disaster area. So the example I raised was that this 2-shift arrangement plus overtime to reach your performance pledge, is that the reason? Then overtime, that arrangement that endangers worker safety and health. So you need to answer this question first. If that is the case, then I'll need to follow up. This is a special circumstance. Why do we have so much overtime? The report has already explained it clearly. So when that means you have difficulty in recruiting, who is willing to do this? You should convert that to permanent posts. You should let the official explain it to the public. Will you respond, or you're the operations manager? So OT is not just the overtime hours. You have a different system in place. Is that the case? If not, you can explain it. When do we incur overtime? I'll attempt to explain. For every civil servant, for every week they have designated working hours. So the postal delivery have to serve 48 hours and 44 hours for other staff. In the email center, I need to explain that it's a 24-hour operation. As Ms. Ao said, there's no break in the whole year. We have 3 shifts, and over the 24 hours. And in the last few years, we have e-commerce business, and that creates a lot of pressure in the ML center. We understand that in overtime, we require staff to do too much. Overtime is not ideal. So after 8 hours, the other work, if they have extra workload, then we need to have overtime. But according to civil service arrangements, we will have to pay overtime or toil, time off in lieu. So time off in lieu should have priority. In the AML Center, we have done a lot. As Ms. Ao said, we have difficulty in recruitment. We have added civil servants to reduce OT. And in the AML Center, we have a lot of work procedures where we have already deployed the work to be handled by the Central Mail Center to reduce overtime pressure. So this is, well, don't just refer to the AML Center. You have to respond to the $179 million question. Well, mail delivery, mail distribution has a lot of OT. You are now confusing us. Mr. Wong Yuk-man asked a very clear question. You need to respond and help us understand. If you're just answering the AML Center, you're falling into that net. Well, if you have to respond to the whole picture. We want to find the facts. The Audit Commission colleagues have pointed out that half of the overtime payment is issued to the Mail Distribution Division, In the mail distribution division, we have 1,700 postal workers. Their full-time task is to serve Hong Kong, new territories, and even outlying islands. So their overtime, usually on Monday when there's less need for that. But because of mail volatility, by Wednesday, Thursday, when we have a lot of mail, they have a work standard that is determined by volume. So after that volume, they have to deliver more mail, they spend more time. They need to do extra work. It's not overtime. They have to. So the toil payment is not due to extra hours. Please respond. You have special circumstances. Chairman is correct. We have to, according to actual work conditions, issue permission. There has to be a regulation for work outside normal working hours. So let's say they should deliver 100 letters, and after 100 letters, if you ask them to deliver an extra 20, so that 20 is overtime, according to the daily volume. So that is a simple explanation. So overtime is not because they worked extra hours. Definitely not. Let's say, according to the designated standard, within the designated hours. So Mr. Wong's question is very good. You are spending 179 million overtime. You can recruit a lot more people. So the overtime work hours. So that amounts to 1.3 million hours, and 1.15 million overtime payment comes to 179 million. So this is a ridiculous figure. And just now, in your response, you could not explain why you cannot resolve this problem. On one hand, you say you need to cut costs, and here you have a staff shortfall, and then you need to recruit more, and then you have to pay 179 million overtime. People watching TV can't follow your argument. So you have a management problem that leads to overtime payment. You have not dealt with that. I'm leaving. I need to make a call, a conference call, so could we break early? Allow me to make a phone call? I have a MTR. I have an urgent high-speed rail issue. Give me some 10 minutes for the phone call.